Hey guys, this is Kiran and you are listening to the first episode in this podcast series, Dopamine and Addiction. You guys have heard about the term dopamine, right? If yes, that's so good. If not, I'll explain you about the term. But you would have heard about the term addiction, right? That's so good. I'll explain you about what addiction is. Generally speaking, when you experience a positive sensation, and dopamine is released into the pathways of the reward center. Your brain takes note of what is this and what has triggered this sensation. Was it a substance, a behavior, a food that is making you feel good? It might be any cues from your environment that can help you find it again. Okay, what are the cues? Did you experience it at night? What else were you doing? Were you with a certain person? When you are exposed to these environmental cues, you'll begin to feel the same drive to seek out the same pleasure. This drive can be incredibly powerful, creating an urge that's hard to control. So guys, keep in mind that this process doesn't always involve harmful substance or activities. Eating good food, having sex, creating art, and a range of other things can trigger similar responses from your brain's reward center. So, what's a myth about dopamine? Let's give you an example of a myth about dopamine. Dopamine is a pleasure chemical. People sometimes refer to dopamine as pleasure chemical. Yeah, this term stems from the misconception that dopamine is directly responsible for feelings of euphoria or pleasure. Okay, but how does that relate and how can you say that's a myth? I'll come to that point. Dopamine does contribute to your experience of pleasure, but it doesn't have much to do with creating pleasure, feelings experts believe. Instead, it helps you reinforce enjoyable sensation and behaviors by linking things that make you feel good with a desire to do them again. This link is an important factor in the development of addiction. Okay, then how does this happen? Let me explain you that also. Okay, when you feel pleasure or euphoria, these are the three things that neurotransmitter cause to make you feel what you feel. Serotonin, endorphin, and oxytocin are the three hormones that is released when your brain feels good. So, let me come to the fact that how dopamine plays a key role in developing tolerance. In context of drugs, tolerance refers to a point at which you stop feeling the effects of a drug to the same degree that you used to, even though you are consuming the same amount of the drug. Okay, if you develop a tolerance to a substance, you will need to use more and more of it to feel the effects you are used to. Dopamine plays a role in this process. Okay, consistent drugs misuse, it eventually leads to overstimulation in the reward center. Its pathways become overwhelmed, making it really harder for it to handle the higher levels of dopamine being released. The brain eventually tries to solve this problem in two ways. What are the two ways? The number one is decreasing dopamine production. The number two is reducing dopamine receptors. Either change, it results in substance having less of an effect due to weaker response by the brain's reward center. But still, the craving to use remains. It just takes more of the drug to satisfy it. There is no single cause of addiction because addiction is a complex brain disorder that doesn't have a single obvious case. Dopamine plays a role, but it's one small piece of a larger puzzle. Experts believe a range of biological and environmental factors that can significantly increase someone's risk for addiction. Some of these biological factors include genes, health history, developmental stage. You might be asking, what are the gene factors? According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, about 40 to 60% of addiction risk stems from genetic factors. Yeah, you heard it right. And you might be asking, what are the health history factors and developmental stage factors? Having a history of certain medical conditions, particularly mental health conditions, can increase your risk to addiction. And what is a developmental stage factor? You might be asking this as well. According to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, using drugs as a teenager increases your risk for addiction down the road. Okay, you might be asking, what are the environmental factors, particularly for children and teenagers? It includes home life, social influences, challenges at school. When living with or near people who misuse drugs can increase the risk of drug addiction. Having friends who take drugs can make it more likely you'll try them and potentially develop an addiction. Having trouble socially and academically can increase your risk for trying drugs and eventually developing an addiction. Listening to all this, you might ask me, how to get help? If you or someone close to you experience addiction, help is available. The first step in getting help is reaching out. You can talk to a healthcare provider about addiction treatment or ask for a referral to another doctor. But if you're not comfortable bringing it up, there are many organizations that can help without requiring you to see your primary healthcare provider. Consider the following. The National Institute on Drug Abuse. It offers resources that can help you decide if you're ready to seek help. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. It has a treatment services locator and phone numbers for national helpline. Typically, therapy is a primary treatment for behavioral addiction such as compulsive gambling and shopping. So, what is the bottom line for all of this? Dopamine is one of the many factors that can contribute to addictions. Contrary to the popular belief, you can't be addicted to dopamine. But it does play an important role in motivating you to seek out pleasurable experiences. Dopamine also contributes to tolerance, which requires you to need more of a substance or activity to feel same effects you initially did. So that's all for today, and I think I'll come up with a new episode next time. So until that, thank you, signing off.